Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. It is Thursday, June 8th, and we are getting ready for the Zootown Open. Josh, Montana Disc Golf, coming your way on the Pro Tour. Are you pumped,
yes,
my friend?
Is. I am pumped. It's a great course. I love being in Montana. It's going to be gorgeous. I mean that. Except I think I was looking at the weather last week. Let me do a quick poll real fast. I think the weather's supposed to be terrible.
Like raining?
Yeah, thunderstorms and rain all weekend long.
Oh no, that's not what you want to hear.
And if you want to talk about a lightning delay on the top of a mountain with limited cell signal and like a shuttle, the only way to get off. Yeah.
Yikes. Well,
fingers crossed that I'm wrong, but the weather does not look.
I'm hoping for the best for everybody.
Yeah.
We will break down the tournament and the course in just a bit. Josh has personal experience playing out there at the Blue Mountain course. But first, we have something a little bit different today. We were talking about this, Josh, before our Tuesday show and decided to turn it into a segment. And the concept is, what would you pay to buy out a contract for player X? Name a player. And so we were thinking about, well, what would this look like? So I think we need to set some ground rules, Josh, about kind of like the concept of, what is our company that we're like hypothetically, purchasing the contract with. And this is not designed to be a, what would you pay a player in free agency to be sponsored by your disc manufacturer, but rather, what would you buy out their current contract for today? Mm-hmm. So I think this could be an interesting exercise. So my thoughts, Josh, we are starting a new company. Mm-hmm. Let's call it Live Discs.
Dang it, Charlie.
And it is, let's say that it's like people know of the company, right? We're not brand new, never been seen before. We are a company that people are aware of generally. Maybe not like a popular brand, but a known brand. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
We have an unlimited budget. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, we have a realistic disc golf budget for the size of the company that we are.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
But
we can't. Yeah,
we could sign all the players, but we have enough money to to go out there and sign some.
Some, yeah. So we're gonna make offers on all of them and see what would fall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only thing that would be guaranteed is that we would get to have, the player has no agency here. So we just get to buy the contract out. They can't say anything about it. We're ignoring any sort of like opt-outs or,
correct.
Other
we're
agreements
basically
in
giving
the contract.
We're basically giving our top, here's what our top offer would be to buy out. If the player said no, then that's where we would stop.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Or just basically hypothetically, like, is it as if it was a trade in a regular team sport league where there's no trade clause. So it's just like,
okay. So
they could just buy and sell the contract.
Couple of questions.
Okay.
Right. Couple of questions for you. Number one, I'm assuming we're establishing what we would pay for salary and the year and like how long.
Well, we would just be getting to the end of the current existing contract.
Oh, so we're okay. I was imagining we put together an offer with a new contract as well.
No. That's a wholly different conversation.
Got it.
So you have to evaluate what you think the likelihood of re-signing the player would be if, for instance, you're signing somebody who's got an expiring contract at the end of the year.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's much less interesting.
Buyout.
This is just a buyout of the current contract. Exactly. And there is some likelihood that if you were to buy out somebody's contract, that you have a better than X% chance, than 5% chance to re-sign them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 50% that you're going to re-sign them, or maybe it's 75%. So you kind of evaluate that. I would say that is perhaps No, I'm not going to overcomplicate it. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay. All
Okay?
right. Okay.
Does that all make sense?
Okay. Makes sense.
So let's dive in then with some contracts. And should we start with a monster or with a smaller, like a 1 year?
I think we should start with a monster that we know the details of.
Okay.
So that way we have like kind of a base of where we're going to be moving down from there.
Well, fair enough. Then why don't we start with the biggest contract that, sort of set this whole thing in motion, and that's Paul Macbeth, who's currently on a 10-year deal. He's got 8 years left on the contract, or 7.5, I suppose. His contract expires in 2031, and we know it's $1 million a year base with sales incentives on top of that. So that's where it is, and we would be buying the contract off of Discraft, knowing you have, let's see, let me make sure I get this right. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's it. So 8 years, 8.5 years, basically. Josh, what would you pay for that contract right now? So basically, you would owe Macbeth.
So I'm gonna owe, assuming I win, I owe
you
Macbeth.
owe him $8.5 million. Let's just call it
I owe
that.
him $8.5 million for sure. Anyway,
You're gonna have to pay him $8.5 million.
If there's one player whose brand of his own line of discs has been resilient to the slowdown, as well as the slowdown in sales, as well as to the oversaturation of the disc market, it's Macbeth's. Right? When the Athena came out, his new 7-speed, everyone was still clamoring to buy it, and it was selling out of shops. And that just doesn't happen with a lot of releases anymore. And so I think Macbeth is one where you do have that opportunity still to continue to make money based on that, just a line of discs, and you do it again. You just do it Discraft, and you just do it again. I think I would offer probably 1.5. I'd round out the 10 million again.
So you would buy it off of them for $10 million.
Essentially, yeah. Right? Because so the buyout fee of theirs, and then so 10 million total.
You're just taking on the contract, and you know that they're making money on it still. Right, I think we can assume that. At some point maybe they won't, and you also have to project out Macbeth potential future. Like, what's the situation? Here's the thing about Macbeth, and here's why I do think it makes sense to pay above the actual contract cost. He is going to be the Jordan brand of whatever company he's with, right? So, like, Discraft, in theory, is never going to stop selling Macbeth discs. They're going to have Macbeth branded discs in 25 years from now.
It's like Innova and Climo discs.
Right.
Like, Climo still is on half their discs.
Exactly. And so it's not hard to imagine that same thing happening with Macbeth. So if you were able to buy it out, and you also have to think, what's Discraft going to take? Or if you try to offer them, $7.5 million, right? Like, okay, technically they save $1 million, in money that doesn't have to go out the door. But on the flip side, how much is the brand equity of Macbeth worth? I think you're about right, but I think you might have to even come in a little bit higher than that. And the question is, like, how much could Macbeth do for for our Live Discs brand? I think I maybe come in at like 12 million.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
I know it's a lot, but like, think about the potential, because he is going to be with your brand until the end of his professional career.
Right.
And I think it's like, even though the question is, could you get a sweeter deal because he's in a little bit of a slump right now? I don't know. I think Discraft, it's not about the play as much as it is about the sales. And
sure,
are Macbeth sales being dented, really? I mean, maybe in the overall market, things are just selling less overall, but
I think the one concern that I would raise is when you talk to players who've only been in the sport for, say, 5 years, they don't really know who Climo is, and they don't buy discs because it says, like, no one buys an Innova T-Bird anymore because it says Climo on it.
Yeah, but Macbeth is built different. I mean,
He's
part of the modern
and
media era.
modern media. He's got multiple courses, and that's why I think it's still worth it. But 12 million for the 8 years,
That's maybe an overpay. I don't know.
I think that's a touch of an overpay, but
because remember, you got to pay for the contract itself, and then you also have to pay Macbeth, right? It's not like that money just goes to Macbeth. No, like this is the cost to purchase the contract itself. Maybe I'm with you. Maybe it's a little closer to 10 million, but it's definitely worth like a lot of money because in theory, you're going to have this IP forever moving forward.
Yeah.
And that would also matter. Like, who owns the existing IP? I think Discraft does. So all the discs they've already made for Macbeth would still be Discraft property. To me, that lowers my bid quite a bit.
Agreed.
I don't know how far, but now I'm thinking
like,
more like 6 to 8 million.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. But we can come back to it. We'll think about it some more.
Okay.
Next up, Josh, let's go Gannon Burr. Contract is expiring at the end of this season. He's already clearly not particularly interested in re-signing with Prodigy, so far as we know. So, how much are you willing to buy this rental contract till the end of the year?
I think this is going to be one of my like spicier takes. I would probably pay $1 million for Gannon's rental contract. $750 to $1 million, and here's
That's
why.
That's crazy.
Here's why. You ready? Here's why. If you get Gannon now, you set up the terms, and you basically get to beat free agency by half a year, and then you sign Gannon to a 10-year deal.
Wow.
I guess here's the problem. Okay, this is why it's probably
the problem
not correct.
is Prodigy won't even take that because Discmania tried to buy the contract out.
And they wouldn't take it. You're right. Here's the problem. Here's why I think this is actually wrong. I'm imagining this like it is like professional American sports,
right,
where there is no tampering clauses. So I'm imagining I get 8 months with Gannon, and he's not allowed to talk to anybody until I'm done with those 8 months. That's not true, though. I guess it's at this point it's 6 months. But I that's the problem with disc golf. Is like just because he's on my team doesn't mean he's not going to go shopping.
He's going to shop. I mean, I guess, and the question is, what benefit do you get by actually buying the contract now? You probably get a little bit, but you could still come out with a big fat offer for Gannon at the end of the year, right?
Yeah. I think it's probably you don't actually buy this contract and you put it in a signing bonus.
I would buy the contract for like $50,000, maybe $100,000, because I do think there's some value to just like being like, we are now. We have Gannon Burr under contract until the end of 2023.
Warehouse.
Boom, we got the disc coming out. Boom, and like you do get some advantage, I would imagine, to be able to talk to Gannon and be like, hey, we really want to work with you. We really want to, we know that it hasn't gone well with Prodigy. Like, how do we make this, a fruitful partnership? We see this as a long-term thing. There's value there, right? Like getting that personal connection does matter, but I don't know how much risk you want to put into the deal with a player who's poised to be able to sign a gigantic contract no matter what, and it's going to get offers from everybody.
You're right. I'm imagining a world with the no tamper clause and a free agency window, and so I was like, because like in the NBA they do like I'm thinking of like the Kyrie Irving trade for the Mavericks. They mortgage their future for a guy who they got guaranteed for 6 months, like. That is a different world than disc golf, and I have to remember that. So I was imagining it kind of in that sports world, and that's I think your pick is your number is much more accurate.
Okay, so then let's go to Eagle. It's kind of
okay, same situation,
sort of. I mean, not the same situation, but the same contract expiration at the end of this year.
Right.
Eagle, of course, dealing with the shoulder situation. I think I think I'm more willing to pay for Eagles' contract because I think that the Gannon is going to be the shiny object at the end of this season for all the manufacturers. And maybe some people get scared off by the Eagle. And therefore, like, getting him under contract now and signing him while maybe he's going to be going into a surgery in the offseason, right? It's like signing KD when he was out with the Achilles when he went to the Nets.
Yep.
So I think I would pay, like, I don't know. There's the same risks as the Gannon deal, but I think I'd pay like $200,000 right now in order to get the contract, have the opportunity to market it for 6 months, and be able to talk to Eagle directly and be like, hey, we want you to get right. If you need to take a year off the tour, that's great. We're going to sign you to a long-term deal. We're going to pay you while you're hurt. Because I think it's worth the risk. Do you think it's worth the risk?
I do. And actually, that was the number in my head. Here's why, though. Gannon is like the truest of free agents, right? Like he doesn't want to be with his old team. We know that. We know he's looking somewhere else. And while there have been rumors of a front runner, like he's moving, which means the barrier of trying to get them to move is a little bit different. Eagle, that's not the case. Eagle feels like one of those Discmania for life guys, right? That they're always going to work to re-sign him, which means the first initial barrier that you need to get over is beating Discmania and the appeal of staying with Discmania. You do. And so I'm willing to pay more to get him out that door. And even if that means I have to risk now negotiations with others, so be it, because I we got rid of the top contender, which was staying with his current.
But I'm now thinking about it, and I'm like, well, Discmania is not going to sell the Eagle contract for $200,000. So, like, how much would they be willing to sell it for? I don't know.
Because if you sell that contract, that literally says to Eagle, like, yeah, we don't want you
anymore. That's right.
Right.
That's
like
right.
This
which I can't imagine that would be their choice unless they decide they want to go all in on Gannon. And they're like, we're tired of worrying about the injury.
Do you think?
I don't think they would do that.
I don't know if they take it for $500.
I don't think they would either.
Would they take it for $750?
I don't know.
I think $750.
I don't know if I want to. I don't want to pay that much for a 6-month deal that doesn't guarantee.
The top of where I would pay is $500, and I think the bottom of where Discmania starts to listen to talks is $750.
Yeah, maybe that's right. And it's just there's no market. There's no market.
Gulf that you're. Yeah, there isn't.
Okay, who's next, Josh?
All right, next up is Calvin. You get to buy Calvin's 5-year deal that he just signed.
So we've got 4.5 years left. It expires at the end of 2027. Gosh.
Top of the Pro Tour right now. And we don't know what he is getting paid.
Consensus number 1 in the world.
Yep.
I think I'd pay $5 million for the contract.
Oh my gosh.
You gotta go big or go home, Josh.
Oh my god!
Why not? Who is the most likely person to be the number 1 player for the next 5 years?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why right now.
Answer my question first,
Charlie.
Who is the number 1 player for the next 5 years? Most likely. I
think Calvin is probably the right answer.
Okay.
I think Eagles hurt, and Calvin has a more established track record than Gannon right now.
Ricky's in and out. Ricky's
in and out.
Slump. Chris Dickerson.
Simon's not playing great.
Slumping, not playing in West Coast. I mean, I don't know.
That's fine. All right, but here's my 2 questions for you. Number 1, the guy hasn't won a major yet.
I understand.
And has shown a propensity to not play well at some majors. But second point, here's my other one. Can you tell me right now, what is Calvin's signature disc mold?
Well, that's an Innova problem, not a Calvin problem. It's the Destroyer.
Yes,
it's the Halo Destroyer.
Okay, nice.
What's your point?
My point, he's also got the Toro, which is a disc they made for Calvin. Here's my point. Calvin is not the most marketable of these guys. I think Gannon, Eagle,
I would have agreed with you 6 months ago even, but I don't think I agree anymore. So many people are huge Calvin fans and love his personality, even though he's not trying to go out there and be like Mr. Social Media guy or whatever. That's fine. You don't have to be that.
Maybe it isn't of a problem. I
think it's a bit of a problem.
5 million is a lot. Because you've got to think that his contract's at least 5 mil, right? With all incentives, maybe it's a super incentive laden structure.
I don't think he got to the $1 million a year mark.
You don't think he got to the $1 million a year mark?
Maybe he'll make that with royalties and whatnot, but I don't think he. I mean, it's 6 figures for sure, but I don't think it's 7.
You think it's 2.5 mil for the 5 years?
I don't know.
That's
I would just be guessing. I have no idea, but the question is, how much is it? What's the value to having Heimberg as your sponsored player? Let's assume you have to pay him $600,000 a year base, but like, I feel like you're getting the number one player. There's already evidence that other companies are willing to pay $1 million a year to the players of his caliber. And are you going to tell me like Rick is more marketable than Calvin? I don't know.
No, but my point that goes along with that, we'll get to Rick in a minute. I have thoughts about Rick's contract, but my point I want to make is you're at the 5 million mark. You have guaranteed that your payment of that contract is more than any other player on tour, because you're assuming $1 million a year now that you're eating.
Yeah, I'm eating it.
That you're eating plus whatever he's making. So let's say it's super conservative. Let's say he's making $250K a year base.
What player is worth paying the premium for to get them onto your team today, right now? The risk with some of these other guys like Eagle and Gannon is that they're on expiring contracts, Josh.
That's
okay,
true.
6 months, you get a little splash, but then maybe they don't sign with you and then you've forgotten. Getting Calvin guaranteed for the next 4 years while he's in the prime of his career and probably going to win some majors, that's a monster situation. That's the number one thing to go out and try to buy out. And maybe you argue that you should go for Paul just because of like the longevity, the proof of concept in the multiple discs, all of that, but and the length of the contract. But Calvin is probably going to be the better player for the next 5 years. And having the number one guy to take your disc company from, something people know to being like, I got to get the new Calvin disc. Come on.
All right. Yeah, you convinced me. That's an expensive buyout, but I think you convinced me.
It's pricey. Okay. Well, we just talked about, how about Ricky? He's got 2.5 years left on his deal with DD. He's getting paid $1 million a year, so that you're on the hook for that.
Sure.
What are you paying?
$250,000 at crypto. Think DD takes those terms? Do they have a Bitcoin wallet? Man, this one's hard. I think this is the hardest one, actually. Because it feels a little bit like Rick is, like, I don't know. When I look at his discs, I'd really interested to see disc sales. Because his discs, I mean, he's got this crazy beefy slammer. He's got the what's it called? The Enforcer. Again, just another crazy beefy disc. Like, not beginner friendly. I don't think a lot of people are throwing him as much. I don't know, man. I really don't know what number I'd put on Ricky's contract. Plus, with the injury right now with the Lyme disease that is going to keep, like, it's not like that's something he can just get taken care of and be done with. Like, there's a chance this keeps going all 4 years.
I mean, it's a big splash to sign Ricky, but I do harbor some concerns about the injury, about the just general level of marketability of Ricky. I feel like he's definitely not as a sure thing as a player to rep your brand as a Calvin or a Paul. I probably would pay like $1 million.
That's
where it's like,
max number
like, I'm willing to pony up some dollars. I'm willing to take some risk, but not like I would for Calvin.
Yeah.
Maybe the differential's too high between Calvin and Rick. I mean, they're not that dissimilar as players.
But you only get Rick for 2 years now. A little over.
2.5 versus
2.5
versus
as opposed to
4.5. Yeah. No, I stand by it. I stand by it. I say $1 million.
I think $1 million's the right number. I wouldn't go higher than $1 million.
I don't know if I would either. Okay, how about some before we get to FPO, how about a couple of players who are really, really promising on 1-year deals, but seem like potential candidates to get a longer term deal and maybe aren't quite as like slam dunk trying to sign you as a Gannon.
Okay.
So how about Aaron Gossage? Gossage's contract expires at the end of the year. So 6 months. I don't think, I mean, we don't know what he's getting paid,
maybe.
But it's probably not too much.
Right. I 50K max. Like, Gossage has shown a level of promise that is very high, but he doesn't have the wins of anybody that we've listed, including other guys that have yet to be listed, that are still on tour and that have more wins above him. Like Adam Hammes, for example. Like,
I'd pay more than 50.
You'd pay more than 50 for
so.
6 months with Goose?
Yeah, because I feel like I could re-sign him to a longer term deal, and he has been as promising as any of these guys. The Barellas, the Hammett.
You mean
even
the guys who
Hammes,
choke?
like Hammes has actually won, so you got to give him credit for that. He's actually won.
Hammes has won 3 times now.
But Gossage has been the better week in and week out player over the last 2 years.
Yeah, but man, wins are what sell discs.
I know. I think I pay $100K.
Okay. I think it's a little high, but I don't think it's unreasonable.
It's crazy to think about how we're talking about this and like how much the value of being one of the top 5 guys is versus being one of the like top 20 guys is.
Yeah. it's wild.
Okay. How about Isaac Robinson? Also expiring at the end of the year.
I would pay Isaac probably 250.
Oh wow! Remember, you're not paying Isaac.
Higher.
You would be paying Prodigy.
Right, Prodigy. Right. I would pay Prodigy 250K. To
Wow!
get Isaac in the door
So you think he's that much more valuable than Gossage? And you're not worried about the Gannon situation with Isaac in terms of he's just gonna take all offers?
I don't think so, and the reason why is I don't think Isaac is the same. Gannon knows what he's worth, right? Like I think Gannon knows that he is the hot commodity, and maybe I'm wrong about Isaac, but I don't think when you look at the two, Gannon is going to command more attention than Isaac, even though they both have a major. They have, I think, the same number of Elite Series wins as well.
I mean, what's weird is that I feel like I agree with you, but I don't quite know why.
Right?
Is it just a personality thing? Is it just like a marketability thing?
I think that's part of it. You know what I think the other part is? I think it's amount of time on coverage. Isaac has shown the ability to hit the ceiling, but then also finds himself between the 10 to 15 range often, where you just don't see him on coverage as much. And Gannon, remember last year, Gannon was on coverage. He was on lead card every tournament, I think.
Gannon is currently number 2 in the Pro Tour standings. Isaac is number 3 in the Pro Tour standings. But I agree with what you're saying. It feels like Gannon is just like a way more like, wow, we gotta sign Gannon.
Right. But the thing is I think Gannon has been the more consistent player, right? And look, Isaac finished 82nd at LVC this year, right? Like Isaac has a bottom that can fall out. He doesn't have, I think, quite the same versatility, but I think if you sign Isaac at, let's say, 60% what you would sign Gannon, I think that's a win.
I think the question is, what did you say you were willing to pay for Gannon's contract?
I'm trying to remember. I said something like $1 million, but that was back when I felt I was like, no, there was a no tamper clause, right, and I get 6 months by myself with Gannon. Tell you what, I'll pay Gannon $1 million, but I'm taking away all forms of communication with the outside world. He only gets a pager.
Weirdly, there's almost an argument for paying more for Isaac's contract, because you have at least I have the sense that I would be able to negotiate a long-term deal with Isaac more easily than I would with Gannon, if that makes sense.
I think that's right.
What a strange situation. Okay.
Here's the other thing. Here's the one other difference. Isn't Isaac like 7 years older than Gannon?
I do think he's older, but I don't know how much.
I think Isaac's like 25 because he's graduated
But
college. 24, 25.
the question is whether you're going to re-sign him or not, right?
Well, right, I agree with that, but I am back to the question of like, what's the hype difference? It's the fact that Gannon is 18 and Isaac is like in his athletic prime.
And Gannon has just dominated at every level,
right?
And yeah. Okay, so I have one more for you.
Okay.
Simon.
Oh crap.
Simon is in the first year of a 10-year that expires at the end of 2032. So you're getting 9.5 years. What would you pay for that contract?
Here's the problem.
It's getting $1 million a year.
Yeah. Here's the problem with the Simon contract. I think that you missed it's too like the best year of Simon's contract is this year. This year is going to be the year that makes the most money from the Simon contract. And to do another switch, I think would create some fatigue in the sense of consumers, and I worry that you would not be able to make back the 10 million without a successful first year. Like I think this year you need to make 2 to 3 on Simon in order to make that contract long-term value worth it, because I think by the year 9 and 10 you are going to be losing money on Simon. So you need to stockpile it, and I think that there is consumer fatigue about Simon moving again if you bought his contract this year that you would not be able to leverage. It sounds crazy, but like I worry that you wouldn't even be able to clear a 10-year 10 million, well 9-year 9 million
just to pay him.
Just to pay him. I don't know if you could clear profit. Probably, you probably could, but it's.
I mean, we got to be honest. There's a risk that Simon's level of play is going to fall off a cliff.
I mean, he's got one win this year, right?
He does.
So he's got a win, but he is sitting 13th in the standings.
He's been very inconsistent, which has been true of him for years. I think
he's not registered for a lot of events, man.
I
didn't realize that.
The cost of paying Simon is high enough of a level of risk that I don't think you could justify paying that much for the contract itself. I would pay maybe $2 million. Maybe a little more.
When I look back at it now, I think the answer for 12 million for Paul is the right answer.
Oh, really?
I think so. Because when I look at that long term, I think that Paul has a better chance of I think there's a resilience to Paul's brand that is outside of his play, and Simon does to an extent, but it was very much reinvigorated by a very successful year. And I would worry that if he didn't have a year like that with Live Disc Golf, that you would not. I think $1 million was probably be the top, maybe 1.5. But I would be very hesitant on the Simon contract with the fatigue and missing out on the best 6 months.
Just to have to take on the deal is risk,
That's exactly right. So your answer, you think you would pay more?
Macbeth, $12 million for Macbeth. I mean, I know I said that, but that's a lot of money to commit. You're paying $12 million for the contract itself, and then you got to pay Macbeth. And
oh, you were thinking you would pay. I was thinking you pay. Sorry, I should clarify. I was thinking paying like $4 million for the contract. So it would be a total.
No. I was saying you pay for the everything is about for the contract itself, not for the commitment.
You would pay $12 million for the Macbeth contract.
That's why I'm second guessing myself. It's just too much. It's too much risk at a time where it feels like, is disc golf ready to accelerate in the way that I would need it to make that money back.
Okay, so top 3 right now. Let's say Simon 1.5. For buying out contract?
I think I said 2, and I'll stick with that. But 2? You can say 1.5. Okay, so that's your number.
1.5 to 2. Okay, Calvin, you said 5.
I would pay 5. I'm still with that.
I'll take 5. I'll go with that. Where do you put Paul?
I don't know. I feel like, again, there's monster residual value to having Paul as a player that is in your stable for the rest of time.
Yep.
Some of it depends on the IP of the existing Macbeth discs. And some of it depends on like likelihood of having Paul Macbeth as your, being able to sell Macbeth discs into perpetuity, which, isn't a guarantee. He could leave at the end of the contract. I don't think it's likely. But I don't know. I still think I pay more than I would pay for Calvin's contract. So I would say, I think 12 is just too rich. It's too rich.
That's way too much.
I think I'm going to say 8 million.
So at 8 million, you are going to have a total financial commitment to Macbeth's contract guaranteed of 16 mil.
Because think about the growth of disc golf is going to come in your favor here.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm gonna be committing myself to like $16 million in outlay. $8 million for the contract, then what I got to pay Macbeth. But again, in theory, a lot of that money's coming back on disc sales.
Right. Well, that's the theory of all these contracts.
Of course, right? Of course. That's why we're willing to pay for them.
Right. I'd say 7. But I don't think that would put me at a nice round 15. But I don't think I'd pay more than 15 total for all of my commitment to Macbeth's contract.
Okay, fair enough. Kristen Tatar. Let's go to FPO. Kristen Tatar's contract is up at the end of 2025. That means it's got about 2.5 years left on it. She's getting paid $250,000 a year, so far as we know. Maybe they've renegotiated that.
Sure.
What are you willing to pay for Tatar's contract?
What is my presence as Live Golf in Europe?
You're small in Europe. You're a U.S. brand.
I'd pay maybe $100,000.
What?
Listen.
Why?
Because
Tatar could be a generational player, Josh.
Here's the thing. Kristen Tatar, every Instagram post is about how hard it is to leave her family, about how difficult it is to come over.
Oh, get the hell out of here with this. What, did she think she's just going to quit the tour?
No, you got 2 years on Tatar's contract. If I had a big European presence, I bet maybe she'll come over and keep playing the majors. But I think there is going to be a point. She is a mom. She has a family.
Oh, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, come on. You cannot tell me.
Tell me. What's your point? How is it? How could you could reap $1 million this year alone from having Tatar switch to your brand?
You're right. So maybe 100,000 a little low. But my point I wanted to make, if you were Latitude, you could pay her as a European ambassador to go around at the European Pro Tour events, at all the silver events in Europe, the European Open, and you could develop a sense of commitment and fandom to your brand as a European brand using Kristen Tatar as the face, and it would significantly reduce her travel and commitment and time away from her family. How old is Kristen Tatar? 32?
Yeah, early 30s.
So by the time she's done with this contract, she's going to be nearing the 35 mark?
It hasn't stopped Owen Scoggins, and it hasn't stopped Juliana Korver.
Yeah, but the difference is that they don't leave their family for months at a time.
I get it, but Kristen Tatar was the number 1 most popular player in our fandom survey last year.
You're right. You're right.
And she's the world's number 1 FPO player by a significant margin right now.
Okay.
And everybody loves Kristen Tatar. Name a person that you know that doesn't like Kristen Tatar.
I don't know a single person.
And
you're probably right.
Is the Grace more popular than the Ricky discs that DD sells?
Yeah, probably is.
Okay, I'm paying $1 million at least for Kristen's contract for 2.5 years. I might pay $2 million. I'm taking a risk, yes, because FPO disc golf is not MPO disc golf. It's not as popular with fans. The numbers are lower, but they're not that much lower. And I think I want to bet on the future of FPO, and we have an interesting email that I want to read in a little bit that kind of gets to this. The growth potential for women's disc golf is enormous. And to have Tatar as the face, I mean, it's not impossible, Josh, that Tatar plays at this level for 7 or 8 more years. Tell me why it's not possible.
Because she chooses not to tour anymore.
Well, it's a hypothetical risk that you're creating. She's already proving to do it. She could get rich. You pay her enough, she can bring her family to the U.S. with her.
Okay, so here's
she relocates. to the U.S.?
Here are the couple of things that I wanna bring up. All right, number one is that I think that fan survey, right, of the popular players is a level of players that I think are more engaged in disc golf than the majority. Like what do you think is it's true. Kristen is incredibly popular,
sure.
right? But
That's not your
the
casuals.
500,000 casuals who watch Jomez probably are not watching FPO that much.
I get that, and I acknowledge that in my number. I'm not willing to pay as much for her contract as I am for Calvin's or Paul's, or even Ricky's. But I still think that her contract is worth a great deal. It's worth a great deal.
Here's what I would say of what I would pay whatever I think I could get back in those 2.5 years. At that point, I would make no bet. If I don't have a European presence, I would make no bet that I could continue to cash significant value after those 2.5 years.
So what's your number? You sticking with 100,000?
No, I'll go up. I think $1 million's too much, though.
I'll pay $1 million right now.
Charlie's literally on the phone with his bank.
I'll start a disc golf company right now.
I might go up to 750, but I think my number's 500.
All right. Well, there you go.
I really, when you you're right. You might be able to pay her enough to just relocate to the United States, but the way that she talks on social media and on interviews about missing her family and enjoying being home, and the kind of brand presence that she has in Estonia, like, I really think there's a good chance at 35 she commits to only playing European tournaments, except for maybe the majors in the United States, like Worlds.
I think even that would be enough to be selling discs like crazy.
Not if you don't have a European presence.
All right, let's go through some more here. Paige Pierce,
okay.
2023 expiring. Now, we don't know for sure. Maybe there's been a renegotiation, but as far as we know, Paige Pierce is up at the end of the season. What are you paying?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to pay for this contract. I would pay more for Paige.
Wow.
I would.
No way.
Yeah.
I feel like that's wild to me at this point. Which is crazy for me to say because I think she's the greatest FPO player to play the game. But I think we've seen we've seen the best of Paige. Am I crazy to say that?
I don't know. It feels like sacrilegious to hear you say that.
I get it, but like
but you might be right.
You want to talk about players who are, more committed to like living their life outside of disc golf. I mean, that describes Paige to me more than it describes Kristen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know that I would want to like go all in. I mean, the thing is, it's also an expiring short contract.
Expiring contract. I wouldn't pay more because it's expiring.
You want to spend more than $500,000 on the Paige contract that expires in 6 months is totally ludicrous to me.
In my head, I was thinking I was getting her till 2025. In 2023, what? I probably would pay $250K.
That's even maybe a little more than I would pay. I think I'd only pay like $150. I mean, I see the case for paying a little bit more because if you can re-sign her, I think it's definitely still a very valuable player, and she moves plastic, and she's very marketable, and she's a great person, all that stuff. I think an incredible ambassador for the brand. But with the expiration and I don't know. It's always tough with these short-term contracts, but I think you could make a huge splash in year one just coming out with a couple discs. Page discs, new discs, kaboom.
And that pays that $250K
right.
or $150K right off the bat. Yeah, I agree. All right, the next one for you. I've got a couple. I've got a pair that I think I'm going to hear your answers on. First up, Ella Hansen. Her deal. I'm going to give them both to you right now, and you can consider them kind of together.
Okay.
You got Ella Hansen, whose deal expires at the end of 2024,
Uh-huh.
so you have a year and a half with Ella Hansen. Holland Hanley, you have till the end of 2023.
Obviously, there's potential, but they're going to have to start winning for real in order to become like heavily marketable.
Mm-hmm.
I think 25 to 50, maybe 25,000 for the Handley contract, and 75,000 for the Hansen contract.
Interesting. So, hot take, I would go the opposite, and I would pay Hanley more.
Even though it's an expiring.
Pay for Hanley's. I would.
Why?
Now, I'd probably do like 25 and 50. That's the number that it was in my head. I maybe would pay 50 for Hanley's contract and 25 for Ella's. Here's the reason why, though. Hanley has a social media presence in the coaching side that if you can re-sign her, even if she, like, you're right, she needs to win, but I think that you have you could market her. Think about, what's his name? Danny Lindell did the Physics of Flight series for Dynamic Discs and never played professionally, but became an immensely popular player as a 970 rated player because of how excellent he was as a coach through his YouTube series. I think if you were a brand, Live Golf became the number one place for instructional Live Disc Golf, became the number one place for instructional videos, and you used Holland Hanley to spearhead that. Even without a win, I think you could really monetize that presence.
I like the theory here.
So I would pay more for
social
Hanley,
media
actually.
value.
Yeah. I think Holland's got a lot of it. It's a lot of it.
I have to admit, I haven't sat down and gone through like all the players' social media and looked at who has like the most Instagram followers and such. So I think there's that matters, right, in these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, it does.
If I was doing the due diligence, a full due diligence to actually want to buy out one of these contracts. I get it, though. But, I mean, again, look at the difference in what we're talking about in terms of value of a Pierce or a Tatar compared to a player who's on the next tier down who they simply don't have the exposure, brand name that those players do. Very similar kind of story. Okay. Good stuff. I think we're going to leave it there. When we come back, we are going to talk a little Zootown Open. We're going to make our picks as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Pound's the best of the best. It's the quality, the craftsmanship, the vision for what a bag could be. Let's start from the beginning. I didn't choose Pound, I chose Levi. I trusted Levi to make the best bag possible.
He's always trying to innovate. He wants it to be perfect. And I think he's the kind of guy that nothing's ever perfect.
I trust the product, I trust the people behind the product.
At this point, I don't think anyone's disputing that it's the best made bag.
Joining us now on the Upshot is Juliana Korver, who just got her third podium in as many years on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and of course was a former guest co-host here on the Upshot, and a partner in the broadcast booth as well. Juliana, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Very good. I'm very good this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining me. Sorry that Josh can't be here, but I'll try to hold it down in his stead. What does it mean to you to, after, all the time you spent away from the tour, in what it maybe is your final season playing in the FPO division on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, to come out and get yet another podium finish and cash a nice size check as a player at one of the most competitive events of the season?
Well, it really justifies to me being out here in the first place. I was starting to wonder if I had maybe gone 1 year too long in my quest to be competitive on this tour, and it really feels like a sense of an accomplishment to me to be able to get that high in the ranks once again.
Well, you were just coming off before the Portland Open, playing at the Tim Selinsky U.S. Masters, which you won in the FP50 division. So when you kind of compare that, a dominant win in the age-protected division at U.S. Masters versus, a podium finish on the DGPT. Which of those things means more to you?
It's really hard to compare the two because they're such different beasts. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to have both available to me. It's more fun, I think, to play in the age protected because there's less stress and, quite frankly, I have a lot more in common with the people I'm playing with. But the excitement and the potential ability to play at the same level as the young women on tour is very exciting. And obviously getting up in the ranks in FPO is a much harder feat. And so I guess I'd say I'm more proud of that, but perhaps I look forward to the age protected a little more.
I just pulled it up because I was curious. You won $3,325 at the Portland Open, which is the most prize money you've won at a single event in your entire career.
That is true.
How much does that matter to you? Is that something that is oh wow, that actually is meaningful at this point, in your life?
Yeah, well, it's very meaningful in the fact that it's not cheap being on the road following the tour. And, only a select few and even fewer females are able to pull in substantial amount of money from sponsors that they don't really have to worry about the week-to-week winnings. And so bringing in that kind of money really propels me forward for the next couple of months with the tour.
What do you think made the difference for you this weekend to play some of your best disc golf of the season? Maybe clearly your best disc golf of the season.
Boy, I wish I knew. I don't, I did. Things just seemed to fall my way. I was able to keep it online. I had great second shots because if anybody watched the cover, they could see that I was not out throwing anybody on my card. So I had to make it up later on in the hole. And my putting was decent. It wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, but it was good enough not to be too much to overcome. And I think I just ended up with a little bit of momentum that I was able to sustain for rounds 3 and rounds 4. I did a good job staying present and not worrying about or getting excited about what the current play might mean for the end of the tournament.
Staying in the moment.
Yeah.
You only went out of bounds once. Was that were you consciously, obviously everybody is not trying to go OB, but there are only a couple other players that were able to do that. So was that something that you were really focusing on, or was that just things were clicking?
Well, I play fairly conservatively compared to the field, I believe. So I don't think it's unusual that I have a fewer number of OB strokes. There weren't a lot of OB options out there.
Sure.
The one time that I went OB, it was a bad wind read, and I threw a disc that was slightly overstable, trying to turn it, and it didn't turn enough. So I'm still kicking myself for that because that was a mental mistake, not a physical mistake, and really shouldn't make mental mistakes on the course like that. I don't know. I think that's just one of the skills that I'm good at usually at the tournaments in staying in bounds.
So I have to ask, you've said that this is your last year on tour. Is there something that would keep you on tour? And if so, what would it be? For another year, let's say.
Well, I hope to come back every once in a while and play a tournament here and a tournament there. When I say this is my last year on tour, I mean that this is my last year where I am trying to get into the Tour Championship finale. And in order to do so, it feels like I have to hit the minimum number of events that will be counted for points. So actually, before this tournament, before this whole California swing, I was very seriously considering dropping the Preserve because it is an incredibly long drive between basically St. Cloud, Minnesota, and Flagstaff, Arizona for the Masters World Championships. And it would be much easier to give myself another week and to not go north when I need to go south. But if I do that, then I'll be dropping one elite event as far as points at the end of the season. And though I am not currently in the top 20, which I need to be to get into that event, I jumped up high enough that it's at least reasonable to think that I could earn my way up there. So now, despite the massive drive afterwards, I believe that Jim and I will be going to Minnesota to play in the Preserve so that I don't get to the end of the year and think, oh, I was 30 points shy of making the cut.
Yeah, you jumped 11 spots into 25th, earning 108 points this weekend. This was an Elite Plus event. Did it feel Elite Plus out on the course?
Maybe, well, this event always feels special because the massive, everything feels bigger here. The baskets look like they're 1,000 feet away, even if it's only 400, because the tree it's next to is 100 feet tall. It's everything just feels a little bit bigger. And the crowds were, I don't know if the crowds were actually the largest that they've been this year, but they were sure the largest that I've seen this year because I haven't been towards the top or on the lead card. So being able to play in front of that many eyes really did make it feel like it was a big deal to me.
So, I want to ask you, because obviously, you're an analyst in the commentary booth quite a bit as well, and I imagine that will be something that you do even more in the future. Some of the storylines have been very interesting this season, and Owen Scoggins ties you for third, and continues to get onto the podium, despite being one of the older players on tour. When you watch Owen play, like, what do you see in her game that's like enabling her to continue to play at this level, and it feels like be knocking on the door of winning an Elite Series event?
I think I'll be more surprised if she doesn't win an Elite before she's done than if she does. Owen, well, for one, she is determined. She believes in herself completely. And not that other women don't, but I think other women need to kind of psych themselves up a little bit more, like be their own cheerleader. And Owen just has it. Owen just feels it and knows it and goes out and proves it. And it's hard to beat somebody that is dangerous up to 70 feet from the pin, in the women's division. She is just remarkable. And it feels like she just wills the disc into the basket.
And we look at Kristen Tatar, who doesn't even really play a great round in the final round, and yet is still easily wins the tournament. And obviously we've gotten used to that. She's been spectacular. You've been around the game a long time. You've seen a lot of great players. Obviously you're one yourself. Where is Kristen in the pantheon of all-time players in FPO in your mind? I
think that's an impossible question to answer. It is such a different game now than it was. And I'm not just talking about the depth of the field. I'm talking about the courses that we're playing and the way that we're playing them and the technology that we're using. It is completely different. As far as her dominance, I think that is kind of par for the course. We usually have one FPO woman who has the ability to play mediocre and still pretty much are almost always come out on top. And over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a little settling of the waters as that new person emerges, because, Paige is still right there and Katrina's there. And now we have some new players like Sai coming on up and trying to fight for that position. But Kristen has been that dominant player, at least over the last couple of seasons. And I see no reason why she won't stay on top for at least a couple more if she chooses to.
All right, and so you just mentioned Sai, so I want to ask about Sai. I mean, she wins a silver event, she beats Kristen, and then here she is again on the podium playing great disc golf. Are we seeing the emergence potentially of a new star? And can she eclipse some of the other players that we've been looking at, like an Ella Hansen or a Holland Handley, who have been kind of making a name but haven't won yet?
Well, for sure, we are seeing the emergence of a new star. I mean, she's already shining bright, and the crowd loves her for good reason. She is super sweet, super kind, super genuine, and just phenomenal on the course. So she has what it takes, and I think we're just seeing the beginning of a very bright career. As far as eclipsing some of the other players, well, Sai's actually been around the game for quite a long time.
True.
So she has a lot more experience and a lot more time on the course. I don't see it as eclipsing Ella or Holland, because they're still very new. And I would say that though maybe the world didn't know it, Sai has always been in front in that particular race.
So when can we expect to hear you next in the booth? I could actually probably go consult the list, but
I think that's the Kansas City Wide Open.
Okay, cool. And so I see you're playing most of the Midwest. I assume you're not going to go over to Europe?
No, I'll stay here. I probably would have anyway, but I think that it would have conflicted with the Masters World Championships.
Got it. Makes sense. What do you hope? I don't know. It's a little premature to ask this question, I guess, but you're already in the Hall of Fame. You've already won 1 million World Championships. What do you hope your legacy is in the game? And is it something you think about when you're playing now?
I don't think about when I'm playing, but I do occasionally think about that. And it's not necessarily just in the game. I don't have children. And I'm probably halfway through my life, if not more. So yeah, it is something that I think about. And I guess I would rather be remembered for somehow in some way helping other FPO get to whatever their goal might be than being, a dominant player.
We mentioned this stat, I think, on Tuesday on the show. The podium, which had 4 players, because you and Owen were tied, had someone in their 20s, someone in their 30s, someone in their 40s, and someone in their 50s. Do you think we'll ever see that again?
That's going to be a tough one. Well, for one thing, I mean, how many times do you have a tie so that there are 4 people on the podium?
Right.
So the probability already drops significantly. But yeah, that's going to be hard.
Okay. Last question for you, because you mentioned that the game has changed a lot since the early 2000s, 1990s. Disc technology. We hear about that, right? We hear about the discs have gotten better, they're faster, etc. What do you feel like is the biggest difference now compared to, let's say, 25 years ago in terms of discs? Is it just the selection of options, or are there actual things that you feel like, wow, no, discs do this thing better now?
I think I mean, the obvious one is speed, but I don't think that's the biggest thing. I think it's more the stability. The most stable discs back then would be very understable to the top throwing players today. So there were not options to throw these massively strong shots. You had to hyzer flip basically everything. So it was a completely different game for that reason. I mean, it's humorous now if you give somebody who's maybe never thrown. I like to put a pro player on a DDC court and see him throw a DDC disc, because a DDC disc is extremely understable, and they think that they're going to be able to just dominate this game with their massive power, but they can't even get the disc. They throw the disc and it lands up on top of on its head, because it flips over.
Completely flips over.
So and the golf discs weren't that extremely understable, but the difference in what it feels like to throw on the tee pad with a destroyer versus what we had back then would feel somewhat similar to that, I believe, to some of the young arms. So yeah, that's what I mean when it was just a different game.
Awesome. Well, I know you're playing the Zootown Open this weekend. You got a practice round in yesterday. What did you think of the course, and what should we expect as viewers, most of whom will be seeing this course for the first time?
I loved the course. I was not really looking forward. Well, I mean, what I don't mean I wasn't excited about. I mean, I wasn't prepared and really thinking what the course was going to be about, and I wasn't consciously aware that we're going to go play on basically a mountain course with elevation, two things that I really enjoy and bring some variety to the game. So I loved the course. I loved the massive downhill holes, and though frustrating, the uphill holes are kind of fun too, because again, it's different than what we've been playing the rest of the season. So I'm going to go play another practice round as soon as we get off the phone here, and I'm already excited about it. Yeah, I like the course a lot.
Awesome. Well, good luck this weekend, and so great to see you continuing to succeed out there, and look forward to being in the booth with you again in a couple months.
Excellent. Thank you, Charlie.
Juliana Korver with us here on The Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Upshot. Josh, as we were talking about contracts, once again, we go to break and we see some news in the break. This time, it's that Lionel Messi, greatest soccer player to ever live, has agreed to, or the rumors are that he will be signing with Inter Miami and joining Major League Soccer, turning down $400 million a year from the Saudi Arabian League. Josh, how much would you be willing to pay for Lionel Messi to play for your soccer team?
Oh man, a lot of money.
Pocatello.
Here's the problem. The biggest stadium that we've got in Pocatello seats like 5,000 maybe. So whatever I can do with 5,000 tickets every game, that's what I'd pay Messi. Maybe a little more, but yeah, a little hard to monetize something of that size in Pocatello, Idaho.
The reports are that he could earn up to $100 million a season, and probably will get an equity stake in the franchise itself, along with monster marketing deals, I'm sure, with various U.S. companies and global brands. I mean, he's already got plenty of those. But
Right.
It's pretty interesting, given the current moment, to see him turn down the Saudi Arabian just absolutely mega offer. Take less, but maybe get a stake in this Miami franchise, which has kind of been a dumpster fire as far as I understand. Not a big MLS guy here, but
Me neither, but
disc golf, it's pretty small still, Josh.
Yeah, well, and I think there's some value in not playing for the Saudis.
Yeah. Yes.
a lot of value in not playing for the Saudis, actually. So, yeah, can't blame him on that decision. But $100 million a year, that's like 10 times all of our contracts combined.
Crazy. Okay, so Zootown Open is coming up in Missoula, Montana this weekend. It's a silver event on the DGPT. Pretty decent showing from top pros. Not everybody there, of course, but still a bunch of big names, including the current number ones, Calvin Heimberg and Christian Tatar. So, Josh, tell us what we need to know about this tournament and the course Blue Mountain in Missoula.
Yeah, so this tournament has been an A tier in the past that has coincided well with other West Coast Swing Tour events, primarily the Beaver State Fling. So you can go back to like 2019, for example. You can find it on Central Coast Disc Golf and see some top players who played in this event in the past. It has previously been combined with the Linda Vista Golf Course, though this year it is exclusively held at Blue Mountain, which is literally a mountain. It is up in the mountains. There will be a shuttle that takes everyone up there. And it is a lot of hiking and a lot of elevation change. So the biggest thing that you're going to see are elevation on lots and lots of holes. Even the ones that are quote unquote flat are still some up a grade or like uphill or incline or decline on the grading. You're going to see rollaways as a consequence, right? Hitting the cage is bad news because it will stand up and roll on you. And there are some holes that the basket is on just like a sheer hill that you could be talking hundreds of feet of roll away if it happens to get hit right. It's fairly wooded, but not a lot of lower foliage. It's like pine trees that you really have 15 to 20 feet, maybe 15 feet before you really start, and sometimes in some places even taller, before you start getting into actual like branches and pine needles and foliage that's going to really interfere with the disc unless you happen to square up to the trunk. So the lines are all pretty obvious lines that and jail isn't really the same as when you compare it with like Idlewild, for example, right? You know, where if you get off the fairway, it's just wholly not obvious how you're ever going to get back out of there again. The biggest thing that you're going to watch, though, the stability of discs. They're coming from Portland, of elevation of 50, to Missoula itself is at 3,200 feet. The peak of Blue Mountain is 6,800 feet. I looked at a topography map and tried to estimate where about Blue Mountain Disc Golf Course is on that map, and my gut says somewhere between 45 and 5,000 feet elevation. Significantly more stable. For anyone who's played at these two extreme elevations, it is night and day in how your discs are going to fly. So the players are going to be making some adjustments. I think there's going to be a real advantage for players who are comfortable playing at this level of elevation. And it's a gorgeous course. The weather is supposed to be, as we mentioned earlier, pretty rainy. So that'll be interesting to see. And I've got 3 holes for you, Charlie, that you really need to watch for this weekend.
All right.
Number 1, hole 4. This is nicknamed Mirkwood. It is the most densely wooded course, a hole on the course. And if you look at this caddy book map, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. If not, you can pull it up on UDisc. It in my opinion, the way this hole looks like it's shaped, looks like you can really push it all the way towards the pin, but right where it kind of angles and turns a little bit, I think that's actually a little bit more severe than it's showing. And so the real play, you can get down quite a ways, especially with a strong forehand, but if the further you push, the bigger chance you have of ending up on a left side jail where you're just kind of making up and being a little bit creative. The purest way to play the hole, at least that I play with my distance, now again, we're talking pros, so this might not even apply. If you play up to that corner, you can have a very clean line to the basket for a pretty easy 3. I would expect pros to try and really get aggressive and push down, though, and then find a line afterwards from that trying to navigate the left side of the hole. But Mirkwood is kind of one of the specialty courses, one of the that it's best known for. Hole 9, 630-foot par 3,
well, that's got to be a
downhill.
That's got to be downhill.
Like, I can get my disc towards that basket because it is so downhill. Andrew Marweed aced it in practice this week.
That's right. That was sick.
And the best part about this hole is that you can see the flight all the way down. Like, it is a cool hole to watch. It's not going to be a big separator, but when it comes to coverage, like, this is the reason you play in Missoula, is to watch shots like this where you literally just get to throw it off a mountain.
You got to have the mountain downhill shot. You know,
you got
it's awesome. Everybody loves it.
So that's a really good one. Hole 18 is the other one that I think is going to be really noteworthy. Now, they have redone some of the holes on this course. If this is the hole that I believe it is, though, and has played previously, I'm not sure if it's 18 in the past, but it is a hole that they've played in the past. This has been a par 5, my gut tells me, in previous years, where eagle was an opportunity, and those with the biggest arms are able to get the eagle. But it does require, with that OB shot, you can drift too far left to be out of position for the birdie. So that's what's going to be interesting about this one. You have OB on the right side where you do want to push that distance to get aggressive, but if you do end up way too far left, you are going to find yourself pinched off behind a grove that's going to require a creative shot to get up and down for your birdie. So I think bogey doesn't seem terribly likely to me on this hole for the top MPO players. I think a par 5 is actually pretty appropriate for FPO. I'm pretty excited to see the way it plays there for FPO. But the birdie par split is going to be enough that if it's within one stroke going into the final hole, I think it's going to be an interesting watch. And so I'm excited to see hole 18 here as well.
Bogey Bay is the name of hole 18.
Bogey Bay does not feel terribly likely with the level of the pros that we're going to be seeing.
Birdie Bay, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more likely.
Par 5 FPO could be reachable for eagle at 663 feet.
It's very, so the first part of it, maybe the first 200, 300 feet is a slight uphill, and then it goes severe pretty uphill after that. Okay, so maybe not. Well, we'll see. You've got a monster arm. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to checking this tournament out on the coverage. Josh, what would you say overall, just holistically, the whole course, what does it take to be successful?
I think a lot of the pros, so in previous years, this was par, and again, the course has been redone. The hot round here in 2019, the last time it was really played by a lot of top pros, it was par 58, and they shot, and Calvin shot the hot round of a 47, so 11 under par. There are a lot of holes that are going to be ultra gettable for the top pros. There are a lot of short holes on par 3s and some soft par 4s. And it just really means if you play it in the fairway and you're able, I think it's really going to be about circle 1 and regulation here. Whoever has the best circle, and I know that's like a common stat that we look at for reference, but really this weekend, if you are not in circle 1 in regulation, you are risking losing strokes on holes that are very gettable for pros at this level. So I'm really going to be watching the circle one regulation stat, and I think even if you're a good putter, the course is a little bit too short that if you are that someone who's able to park over and over and over, that's going to be the key here. It's only 8,000 feet, so there is going to be some advantage for strong putters, but circle 1 regulation is the stat I'm watching for the weekend.
All right. So Josh, I think it's time to go ahead and make our picks. It is a silver, so we're just picking winners today. And once again, I'll just note, Calvin Heimberg, Gannon Burr, Isaac Robinson, top 3 in the Pro Tour, all playing this weekend. There are a number of absences. So if you're making your fantasy picks or your Grip 6 picks or whatnot, make sure you check out the registration because there's plenty of people who are not playing. On the FPO side, the top 3 players, in the current DGPT standings that are competing this weekend: Kristen Tatar, Katrina Allen, and Missy Gannon. No Page, plenty of other people sitting this one out. So Tatar will certainly be the heavy favorite going into the weekend. In fact, you know what? Let me just hit you with the win probability right now. Calvin Heimberg sitting at a 30% chance to win. Kristen Tatar, 66% chance to win. So there you go. Josh, who you taking?
Well, I'm going to be boring, and I'm going to take Kristen Tatar again. Shocker. I mean, Kristen is just a heavy favorite. I don't know what else there is to add to Kristen here. She is dominant. She's playing amazing golf. and especially with a lighter field, like yeah, she could lose. She could lose every week, but she often doesn't. So I'm taking Kristen to win on the FPL side.
I'm taking my L from last week, and I'm taking Kristen as well. I mean, it's just she's just playing too well, and the field is too thin. She's a heavy favorite.
All right, over on MPO, Charlie, who are you taking?
I'm gonna take James Conrad.
Okay.
He's had been a little weird, but he was playing really well recently and then had the kind of bad round in a tournament that he should have won. He also finished second here back in 2019, the only time he's played the Zootown Open. He lost to Calvin Heimberg by about 6 strokes. Calvin's the easy pick to make, but I don't know. Something tells me James is going to win it this weekend. I feel like he's been close. I think the course sets up well for his game. And I like his chances here as much as anybody.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. Calvin is the easy person to pick, and I am going to take him. I mean, the last time that we had all the pros here, Calvin really beat the field 7 strokes over James. And here's the other thing is he only beat James by 2 strokes on the golf course. He made up the strokes on the mountain, which is the only course that's going to be played this year. Yep. I think that bodes really well for Calvin. And I mean, it is easy, but with a silver event, I'm going to take, here's the other thing and the reason I take Calvin. With silver, we only get 1 pick. And I think it's a higher likelihood that Calvin at least finishes on the podium at worst. And I could see James dropping down to like 5th. So I take Calvin just for the fact that I could get some points out of him staying on the podium.
Fair enough. Josh, you got an over-under for me, I hear.
I do have an over-under for you. If you look at the registration on the MPO side, tied for the 5th highest rated player is a guy by the name of Dallin Blanchard. Dallin Blanchard is a local pro from Idaho Falls, Idaho. He's 1032 rated. We know how local pros do. Sometimes they show up, but oftentimes they don't quite play up to their rating when you have this kind of a field. But I still think it's an interesting question. Now, the last time in 2019, I'm going to use that one as our reference point, Dallin Blanchard was 1017 rated, and he finished in 10th place. Now, he was beat out by a couple other local pros, as well as the likes of Chandler Fry, Garrett Gerthy, Grady Shue, Colton Montgomery, Jordan Castro, Brian Earhart, right? Like, plenty of guys and names that we know. So right now, you got Dallin Blanchard, though, tied for 5th highest rated person in the field. I'm going to give you over under 10.5 on his finishing place.
Oh.
Now, it should be noted, this year, there's also the likes of Andrew Marweed, Alden Harris, Garrett Gerthy, Adam Hammis, Kevin Jones, Chris Clemens, Mason Ford, James Conrad, Nicola Castro. Like, there are a lot of players here, some of which who have never played this course, but who are touring professionals. The one other thing I will note, he played Worlds in Utah and took 30th. So that's a little more recent of another local course that he has played. So there's your reference point.
It's a tough call. Josh. He played Zootown Open just once, as you mentioned, 10th place in 2019. He shot a 1013 event rating. Not his best weekend.
No, but he was almost 20 points lower rated at that time.
Good point. His most recent he's only played 3 tournaments in 2023. He's won all 3 of them. An A tier and 2 C tiers, all in Idaho. He shot approximately 1032 average on those 3 tournaments. His most recent tournament, he shot 1039 rated, which probably would be good enough for a top 10 finish.
Here's what I'll also say. Ragnarok, which is the event you're referencing, is the heavily wooded Nordic Center course that is up in a cross-country ski course and is a very similar profile in some ways to Blue Mountain.
I'm going to say over. I think he's going to just miss that cut. I think he's going to finish somewhere between 10 and 20. Okay. I just think there's too many other good players there, and like he hasn't played that much. He hasn't played. I mean, he played last month. I don't know. It's a really tough call. If he'd played this event every year and he was like great on this course, and I could see that, I'd probably take him to top 10. But I think it's going to be a stretch. Although I will be very interested to follow his weekend.
I'm definitely going to be. I'm glad I get the under because that means I get to root for him, which is definitely what I wanted to do. So, All right.
Well, there you go. There's our picks. You can make your own at discgolf.ultiworld.com/upshot-picks. Josh, have so much fun at Zootown.
Thank you. I will. If you're going to be there, everybody, come say hi. I'd love to hang out.
But before we go, we got a great email, and I meant to read it earlier, and I forgot, so we'll do it right now. And this one comes from Mike B. Mike B. He was at the Portland Open and just wanted to share some thoughts. So I will read this, and then we can discuss, Josh.
Okay.
A couple different things from Mike B. The number of women who spectated this event was incredible. Anecdotally, I would guess they made up as much as 40%, if not more, of the spectators. Having been to each year's Portland Open, this was most definitely not the case before, and seeing that growth is fantastic. Then, different point. The way we're filming disc golf, especially on courses like Glendophere, isn't doing it justice. Showcasing scale, distance, and visual speed of the shots being thrown should be a bigger priority. Not just speed guns, but actually showing how fast and far the discs are being thrown with new or different camera angles or equipment that allows for it. I'm not suggesting it's a fix overnight or cheap if it requires new equipment. I'm simply saying if you haven't seen professional disc golf live, so far you have only seen a facsimile of it. It's bigger and faster and further than you realize, and we should keep experimenting to see if we could show that in the coverage. And then let's see. We got an email a couple weeks ago, Josh, about the tour event feeling small. Mm-hmm. But Mike wants to point out that it also feels big at an event like the Portland Open. Yes, the players are extremely accessible. Yes, most cards have little to no spectators. The vendor village is fairly small, and you can walk right up to the CEO of the Pro Tour, and he's nice enough to talk with anyone. But when it's the final day, and you have literally thousands of people all staring, totally still, absolutely silent, waiting as a player readies a shot that could win or lose the event, it feels very big. When a player throws their arms into the air, reacting to the outcome of that shot, breaking that long tension, and the entire crowd of thousands roar or groan, it doesn't feel small. We need to capture that silence, along with all the sound we already do. Portland Open is far from perfect. The Disc Golf Pro Tour has a long way to go, but the live product right now is phenomenal. Coverage is great too, but I hope it could showcase even more. So there's some thoughts from Mike B.
I think he highlights kind of the, I don't want to call it disparity, but I mean really the two extremes of the tour, right? And the problem is the number of tour events that fall under the Portland Open side in terms of spectator availability, the quality, and the number of people that are able to be accommodated with the gorgeous landscape that is Glendophere is very limited. And that's what we always talk about here, right? That is the story of this show, that when we talk about spectators, is that, or courses, is that we need more courses like Portland, because he's right. Portland is amazing, and it is fantastic for spectators and for live coverage and for the golf itself, and it's gorgeous, and more courses need to be like Portland. In that way, in terms of its capacity to be a spectator sport. And so I think Mike B did see the best of disc golf, right? And I think back to my experience at Worlds in 2021 at the Fort, when we were on all those bleachers and right behind the pin for James Conrad's shot. Like, it did feel big at that moment.
Oh yeah.
But if you were there on previous events, like the day before or 2 days before, we were at the golf course on Friday, and I think there was one small set of bleachers on the 18th hole watching it come in, and then like maybe 200 people following the card, and like that was it. And so it felt much smaller in those instances. There is an extreme right now on the Pro Tour because of the type of courses as well as like the popularity. But Mike B is right. He is showing us, if you have a course that can facilitate spectators, that's very gorgeous and exciting to watch, and is in a metropolitan area, disc golf could be massive, and you could have 5,000 people at every single event. But that's the limitation of course design and availability that we're trying to overcome. And so I guess I think that's the biggest point I would make. And I guess Mike B went to the a Yankees Red Sox playoff game, not an Oakland A's June game. And that's kind of the difference, right, in the two events that we're talking about here.
I think there's more people at Silver events than there are at Oakland A's June games. One thing I'll say on the video production note, I really like his point. For the most part, live coverage has followed the model of post-produced coverage, which is like, okay, we're going to put a camera behind the person who throws, and then we're going to have a camera in the fairway to see it come in. We have reached the limit of that as a way of showcasing holes. There are holes where that's just basically required. But it is time for the producers at the Disc Golf Network to start thinking about how can we get shots from another angle. And I'm not talking about the drone overhead shots.
Not drone shots. I was about to say the same thing.
I personally, I don't think that's a great way to show a hole most of the time. I think once in a while seeing that on a replay is okay, but it's too flat. It's like I'm watching on 2D. It doesn't give me any sense of the scale, and I also can't really see the angle of the disc in the air, so I don't really like that. But I'm imagining something where, you have somebody in an elevated tower, or you have a camera on a jib, and you're like maybe medium zoomed onto the player on the tee, and you see them release the disc, and you zoom out, and you follow the disc from like the middle of the fairway the whole way as it flies, and then you kind of zooming in as it's going towards wherever it's going to land in the fairway. There are spots where either you're up on a hill or you have some kind of elevated position where you could show the whole flight from one camera angle that's kind of like mid-fairway and then it pans to the green. That would be very interesting and give a sense of that scope that we don't always get from the standard behind the player and then catch cam. I also think there's just times where the directors are just too much in the rhythm of showing T-cam, catch cam, T-cam, catch cam, T-cam, catch cam. Show it from the T-cam sometimes the whole way. There are certain shots where that is going to be a better way of watching the flight of the disc through the air. We don't always just need to see it from the catch cam come into wherever it's going to land. A lot of times I find that disorienting. And so I just think there's a lot of room for innovation there, because I completely agree with what Mike says. If you haven't been out live, you do not realize just how much further they throw and how much more powerful their shots are and majestic their shots are when you're watching it on camera.
The other thing, the two things I was going to add, I really like the catch cam angles where it's only the catch cam and you watch them tee off from the catch cam,
start
and they
zoom
pull back,
and pull out.
Yeah. Love those shots. I think those look
on
great.
Shorter par threes. I think that's the right decision, because you can see the disc coming and you can see the flight of the angle of the disc coming to the gap 100%.
To your point about the idea of like having the middle ground where you follow it and all the way from the middle of the fairway. How often now it's not perfect because the catch cam operator is oftentimes reacting, but the shots where the discs go past the catch cam operator when they weren't expecting it ends up being pretty cool shots usually, because that catch cam is like just still panning, and like you really do get a sense of how far that disc is going and how fast it flies by that operator. If they were to do that with a little bit more intentionality, I think you could see that shot a lot more, and I'd really like that. So great point, Mike B. And Charlie, I completely agree with you. I think those would be some really interesting things to experiment with.
And I think what a wonderful thing that we have a disc that flies through the air and has a shape and has a trajectory that we can visually see. Compared to a golf ball, when you watch golf, the only way they're really able to convey the shot to you is with tracer technology.
Yep.
And I guess it's kind of cute when they use it for disc golf, the tracer stuff. Jomez doing the
follow flight
all these years now. But it's hard to replicate that in live without very expensive equipment. And they do it sometimes, but it's not necessary, because we can visually see the flight of the disc in a way that, isn't necessarily as available when you're watching golf. And I think that's a real advantage for disc golf. We need to try to think about how are ways we can take advantage of that more. So
the one thing I will change, I will add about follow flight. I love comparative follow flights.
Yes.
When they do all four of them, and they either show that they flew the exact same line, or it's
how all the different lines,
all the different lines that end in it. Yes,
totally agree with you. Agree with you. If you can find a way to do that in live, which is not easy, it would be a cool thing to add in there.
I would watch a replay where you threw where all four discs came at the same time, and you just overlaid their shot trackers on them. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. That'd probably be pretty hard though.
Yeah, it's a little harder than you might think. But it's a cool concept for sure.
Yeah.
All right, that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you next week right here on The Upshot.